All right. Well, hello, everybody. Today's Wednesday, July 15th, and I'm Jim Donnelly, technical agronomist at DeKalb Asgrow in Northern Illinois. I'm joined by Rachel Willis, my counterpart to the south, and we thought we'd cover a few topics today. So to start off with, as usual, we will hit the GDU update chart. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about crop progress. Do another disease update, as Rachel and I love to do. Hit a little bit on fungicide timing, kind of what we feel is best maybe this year. And then we'll kind of touch on a couple insect things, again, a little bit more on aphids, as well as corn rootworm. So to start off with, just a bit of a growing degree day update. This is what Rachel pulled from Princeton, Illinois. And, essentially we are kind of right on track to be average, really. We are slightly above average compared to the 30-year average anyway. Currently, we sit at 1,353 GDUs compared to 1,288. As you see on the chart, if you follow that green line is our 2026 accumulations. And we continue that roller coaster. So you can see we started off as a dip. Again, we talked about how cool that was early, and then we ramped up with some of that early heat again the first part of June. Then we cool off again the late part of June, and now we're accelerating GDU accumulations again with this heat. So you can see projected to have silking in that mid to July timeframe. Honestly, it's pretty close. Granted, this is, again, for a May 1st planting date. I think the estimation is a little bit behind. I think a lot of our fields are in full silking, at least in that area, but overall it's pretty close. So again, over the next week or so, we'll see continuing GDU accumulations pretty rapidly with the heat that we're in. But then it looks like we're going to be in another roller coaster, maybe cool down to some of the lower 80s. So all in all, a lot of ups and downs. But the good thing is we're kind of right on average for crop progress. I would say for Northern Illinois, a lot of fields are at least starting to push silk anyway. Some of the earlier planted stuff is full tassel and full silking. Majority of stuff is pushing silks. So again, pretty much in agreement with what we're seeing there. Rachel, what do you have to add for your geography?
Yeah, not a lot. I would say that I'm slightly further south, so I probably have a few more fields that are fully tasseled, a few more fields that are silking. But kind of what you said, where most fields probably, unless you're extremely late planted or even really full season stuff, late planted is kind of starting to look like it's pushing silks. I went to a plot yesterday thinking I would see some differences, and I got there, and 106 to 118, they were all starting to shed. So we're rapidly progressing with this heat.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would add, just from a crop condition standpoint, I know a lot of areas had a lot of rain, and as a result, we're kind of seeing some nitrogen deficiency in some of those areas as a result of being so wet and saturated. Honestly, I think this is kind of an okay thing to get some heat, kind of help dry that ground out, and also hopefully provide a little bit of additional mineralization as we can warm up those soils with some of that moisture. Hopefully we can release some additional nitrogen from organic matter. So for me, the heat is welcome as long as we're not too stressful for too long.
Yep, I think getting some heat now and cooling off next week is going to be just right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, speaking of weather and being hot and then being cool, etc., let's talk a little bit about disease. So out in the field, I would say it's becoming what I would say fairly easy to find northern cornleaf blight and gray leaf spot. It's out there. Not even, just on the very lowest leaves. Some of those lower leaves are starting to kind of slough off a little bit, but you can still see it on those the next tier up of leaves, you can see a decent amount of great leaf spot, decent amount of northern corn leaf blight, and we're just right there at tassel like we talked about. So we're not seeing as much tar spot as we thought we would. We'll actually I have another slide about tar spot coming up. But we are seeing a lot of those other diseases. And I think about what I call kind of a normal disease year, whatever that is. It's rare to find in a normal disease year, I wouldn't expect to find this much northern or this much great leaf spot. So I still think that we have decent disease pressure. We're not seeing a ton of tar spot like we did this time last year, but we're still seeing a decent amount of fungal pathogens out there. So we're going to talk about fungicide later. I won't go into that discussion right now, but I do want you to keep in mind that we're seeing plenty of disease out there, and we're just at tassel. So I think that we still have kind of potential for a little bit higher disease pressure than what we would call a normal year, or definitely what we would call a low disease pressure year. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about tar spot. It's definitely here, but I don't think that we need to panic. So I found it. Jim has found it. Several of my coworkers have found it as well. So it's out here. I haven't found it very far south. So I scouted. I live around Monmouth. I scouted around Monmouth yesterday and didn't find it. That doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that I didn't find it. But it's definitely in our territory. So we're seeing it, but I don't think that we need to panic. Just as a quick reminder of what we were dealing with last year, we had considerably more pressure. And because of that, I think we're all like kind of hypersensitive to tar spot this year. But I pulled up some of the pictures that I took about this time last year. So I think this was from my camera roll between July 11th and July 17th, I think is when I pulled these pictures. And you can see there's considerably more tar spot. There was way more northern corn leaf blight out there last year. I don't think I included the picture, but I did find a picture that actually had southern rust and tar spot about this time last year. So tons and tons more disease last year. I think this year is more of a normal year, maybe a slightly higher pressure year, but not to the extreme level that we had last year. So again, these pictures are from last year. I'll show you again, this is what we're finding this year. So not near as bad, but we are certainly finding disease before tassel, which means that we need to be thinking about a fungicide.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think the way I look at it is from a tar spot standpoint, we're at least 5 weeks behind where we were last year in terms of the level of disease that we had. I mean, the pictures that Rachel showed of go back one more of basically what we're finding now. We were finding that on June 19th, and even then we were finding considerably more than what we're finding now in 2026 on the same date. So that's why I say we're a good 5 months or months. I wish 5 weeks behind where we were last year. And when it comes to major disease, impacts, like that time portion is absolutely huge. So right now the crop is outpacing disease development at least in terms of tar spot. And so that makes me happy and pretty comfortable, at least from a tar spot standpoint. But like we're going to talk about, from when it comes to fungicide, there are other threats out there that we need to deal with, and that's why we'll talk about the fungicide timing thing. So I guess I was going to start this off. So typically, even before tar spot, like VT to R2 was our main time frame, and the reason is that was the best bang for the buck. Our biggest return from a fungicide standpoint was that time frame. The way I look at it is that's where we need to be this year. Is that VT to R2 time frame. Like, I'm okay with shifting it like a little bit within that window, but not very much. We need to make sure that we're, within that VT to R2 time frame to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. So it's one of those that we talked about it before this call, Rachel and I did, like, um, we don't have a lot of tar spot out there, so I think that there's a sentiment of, or potentially a sentiment of, all right, well, maybe we can not, we can get by with not having to do a fungicide. And I think we got to remind ourselves there were plenty of years before tar spot where we had some significant returns because of other diseases like gray leaf, like northern corn leaf blight, and also crown rot. We cannot forget that these tassel time fungicides protect, early onset crown rot as well. So we need to make sure that we're still applying fungicides for those reasons, but also that tar spot isn't going to go away. We wake up in the mornings with condensation on our windows. There's tons of dew out there. Like, it can continue to progress, especially if temperatures cool. So we don't want to forget about it. But that's why we want to make sure that we're doing that VT to R2 timeframe this year. Rachel, anything to add?
Yeah, so I would say on fungicide timing, usually when guys ask me, my standard recommendation is like that VT application. If you are a week later than what I'm telling you, that's fine. If you're like 3 or 4 weeks later, that's where I really, really get concerned. So there's a little bit of wiggle room on that. I want it around tassel time. There is a little bit of wiggle room. I would say my one concern, if you are in the camp of thinking you're going to wait a little bit because you're not seeing a ton of disease out there, um, I don't want you to wait and then be delayed on when you can actually get that in. And then it becomes a difference of 3 weeks instead of a difference of 1 week. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind as you think about when to spray. But I agree with Jim. We have plenty of good conditions for disease in general. I do think that most years when we go out, if you think about before tar spot, we would go out and we would maybe see just a tiny bit of gray leaf spot starting around tassel. And now it feels like there's more than just a tiny bit of gray leaf spot starting. So we definitely have disease pressure out there, even if we don't have a ton of tar spot pressure. Every morning when I get up, it's foggy at my house. My shoes get wet when I walk across the grass. We have good conditions for disease. So, but having said that, my recommendation is do one good fungicide, do a high quality product, do a higher rate if you can, do that around tassel time. I don't know if we will need that R3 application. Jim and I will be back in a couple weeks and we'll talk a little bit more about what we're thinking on that. But make sure that you do one good application and really make it count. Make sure that you do a good job on that application. Anything else on fungicide, Jim?
Nope, I think that's good.
All right, so let's talk just really quickly about aphids. I don't love talking about aphids. I don't think Jim might actually like talking about aphids more than me. I don't know. I don't love talking about aphids. They are certainly out there to the south. So central Illinois, southern Illinois, a few pockets of kind of the southern part of eastern Illinois, if that makes sense. They've seen a lot of aphids out there. I really haven't seen a lot. So I did take these pictures in my territory. This was the one plant that I found that had some aphids on it. So you may see 1 or 2 plants with aphids out there. Just make sure that you're out there scouting. If your corn hasn't tasseled yet, make sure that you're pulling those tassels, peeling off those leaves, looking for the aphids inside the leaves there wrapped around the tassel. Make sure that you're aware of that. From my standpoint, I don't know that we're going to have to worry as much about those as aphids as maybe we thought 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were hearing reports from central Illinois and southern Illinois. If you do find aphids at the level that you need to treat, in the past we've used bifenthrin. If you do that, make sure that you use a really high rate of bifenthrin the within label. The other product that I want to talk really quickly about is Savanto Prime. So Savanto Prime is a product, it's a Bayer product that is specifically made for like those piercing sucking insects. So it has very good efficacy on aphids. It has a little bit longer residual as well. So when we were talking about bifenthrin, that's a good knockdown, but it's not gonna give you any residual, and it also kills all of the beneficials out there as well. Savanto is specific for those piercing sucking insects, so we don't get the knockdown of the beneficials. And then you also have a nice residual there too. So it's a good option. If you're really targeting aphids, it's probably your best option there. I don't think that we actually need that much in my territory this year, but I want you guys to know that that's an option. And to the south and to the east of us, that's one of the products that they're running. And even further south, we talked with some folks that are getting into harvest now in Texas, and they've had very good luck managing them, but being very intentional about managing for aphids if needed.
Yeah. I
Jim,
would just
anything?
add, yeah, from a geographic standpoint and pressure north of 80, yeah, I'm with Rachel. I did a round on Monday, looking, specifically for aphids and disease, and just not seeing what they were seeing down south. Looking at more susceptible products and looking at pre-tassel corn, just not seeing it. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get to tassel without having issues, um, which that pre-tassel is where the major issues occur. We'll still keep an eye on things late. I mean, they can always flare, but if they do, the impact won't be as great as if they were here now and causing issues. So we wanted to let you know that just because you probably already hearing or may hear, hubbub from the south about high aphids, and wondering what that means for us. And the way it sits right now is we don't really see it being an issue for Northern Illinois.
Yep. If
It's
that
in the near
changes,
term. Right.
yeah, we'll certainly update you on it though.
So just lastly, just going to add, status on corn rootworm. Basically, we're in peak beetle emergence, even up north. I'm guessing, Rachel is well within that.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure that you're looking for beetles, looking for signs. Pre-silking, pre-tassel corn, you're going to see a lot of that bottom, that larger picture there of leaf feeding on from beetles. Once we get silk emergence, they're gonna move to silk. So really the biggest thing right now is to monitor silks. You have a short window for successful pollination. So I want to make sure that we're out looking for that, because we've got some fields, obviously mostly corn on corn for us, where we've got some pretty good pressure already. So I want to make sure that we're looking at those, farmers looking at those, our dealers are looking at those, to make sure that we're protecting pollination. And then from beyond that, I want to make sure that we're targeting those fields, digging roots, and, implementing a management strategy going forward.
All right. So that's it. Which most of the time when we do these, it's disease and insects, right? And that's kind of what we covered today. Just make sure that you're scouting out there, that you know what disease you have. It's certainly not a year to rest on or to avoid fungicide. I think that it's still a good year for fungicide. Tar spot pressure is slightly lower than it was last year, maybe significantly lower than it was last year. But disease pressure overall, I think, is still in that average to high category in my head. So a good well-timed fungicide is still recommended. Again, make sure you're scouting for aphids. I don't think that that's going to be our biggest issue this year, but make sure that you're scouting. We don't want to be surprised on that. And then lastly, watch for those rootworm beetles. Like Jim said, you only have a kind of a really short window there for proper pollination. So make sure that you catch any silk clipping ahead of time so that you can be proactive there. Jim, anything you want to add on our summary?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys listening in. And as always, if you have questions, if issues come up, give us a call.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.